I just tell you a story about being excited about going to the Fair of Black Lion when I was 8 or 9 years of age. I was that excited that I wouldn't sleep the night before. And I'd get up about, myself and my father would be up at 5:30. And we'd eat something that wouldn't be a lot because he'd be too excited to eat. But anyhow, the cattle that we'd be bringing to the fair would be way up at the upper end of the land on a top road, what we call the top lane. And this particular morning now, it was the 19th of November, and it was not a cold morning, but wet, you know, soft, wet morning, and very dark. But anyhow, we arrived at the top road with the 3 animals in the field, and I helped them put them out on the road. But at that stage, there came about 7 or 8 men and maybe 20 head of cattle along the road. Something I always didn't think of it at the time, but I thought of it all during my life after. My father says, I'm all right now. I have company and I'll have help. You can go home and go down on the bus to the fair. Now, he could have said go home and go to school. And that'd be like, well, I don't know why I hated going to school. But anyhow, I went home and I'd have went down on probably 9:15 or 9 o'clock bus. They belonged to the Sligo, Leitrim and Northern Counties Railway, that bus. They owned the bus service as well. But I got down on the bus to Black Lion and everybody was wet about the fair and drowned it, and I met my father and stood a while, but he sent me over. I think it was Fairley's, but I'm not so sure if it was Green's either, but I got a big bowl of soup and a full round of a plain loaf. Now, there was no slice loaf, it was cut with a knife, like, but it would be a good, not an inch thick, but a half an inch thick. And the soup, you could describe it nearly as being a kind of a light stew. It was made of beef, but between onions and carrots and parsnips and chunks of meat in it. So that was my feed for the day. But like Nevin Maguire, if he ever listens to this, he might take a cue from it. It was a very sustaining soup that you could stay in the fair all day and you might get a baby packet of sweets before you'd walk home. But it was a wet day anyway, and I remember my father sold the 3 cattle. Now I can't say, but it'd be about 27 or 28 pound a piece, something like that at the time. And he bought a cow for milk. Now, it was November and there'd always have to be a cow. Whatever cows would be about the house would be gone in calf, and they'd eventually have no milk after Christmas. But this was a cow that wasn't in calf, a youngish cow. They called her a stripper cow because she had a drop of milk. And I had to walk home with the cow. But I was with, I would say, a man called Alec Johnston, and there was Gilguns up here on the top road. They were nearly always going to the fair, and you know, a lot of them would come over the back road, over by the back at the chapel, up at Killicarney they called it, and we would come the top road. We'd kind of avoid the main road if we could. Just to say about walking, I walked several times to Black Lion Fair, and you know, there'd be elderly fellas, or I'd call them elderly, they might be only in their 40s that time, but when you were a child, anybody that was 40 was long past it. They were an old person, that's the way you seen them. But they'd be fairly well, very snug and well dressed of a wet morning with a coat and a waistcoat and maybe smoking a pipe and teasing tobacco and filling it as they went along, you know. And they'd always walk the middle of the road. Well, it took me a long while to understand why, but that was, if any animal broke across the ditch, they wouldn't be expected, but whoever was on the sideline, you know, like playing football, they'd have to go. And the biggest trouble was when you got down past what was Loughan Quarry, there was always a few council lorries about there, and not so bad for a while, but it was always the old road, the new road wasn't there. We walked round by the chapel, and there was a place then, it was going up to the old land road, they called it McCurry's of the Cross, just before you go up the hill. And see the lorries, well, they were moving and going, but there was no real life in them. They'd make an awful racket of huffing and puffing, and any kind of a young animal was well able to run with them. And the lorry wasn't able to get up enough speed to go by them. But the end of the situation would be the animal cleared the ditch into the field. And like, they could get in all right, but they couldn't get out. They didn't know where to get out, or you wouldn't get them out. You'd have to bring them to a gate to get them out. And that was a lot of hassle. And there was another problem as well. Now, there'd be an old cow that'd be a selling, you know, she'd be at the or end of her useful life, and she'd be brought to the fair. And, you know, if she took a notion of breaking her going home, you'd nearly have to shoot her dead to stop her. She'd go home, and that'd be the way it'd be, because I seen it myself, you know, a cow breaking and going home, and they'd be away on bicycles after her, but they might have to come back without her, because she'd take a notion of going home, and that'd be it. And she'd go straight home.